And so, he tells us that many factors cause the approach to knowledge in the university curriculum to change. For example, developing technology for industry and defense meant that the sciences rather, became increasingly specialized, right? So
Yep.
we moved away from this type of approach where when we were going to school, to developing technologies and industry and defense, right? And
Sure.
so sciences became increasingly specialized. And of course, over time, so that's one factor that caused change, the emphasis on why people were there, right? And then also there was we might call a philosophical, right, kind of change. He says over time, a fact value distinction came about according to which truth and facts, or in the sciences, empirical knowledge, notice, became the only knowledge. So only truth and facts, values were left out. Ethics was left out because they didn't bring knowledge. We only needed truth and facts. And so these are at least a couple of the factors he's mentioned here that brought about the change that we see here from the way it was in the beginning, right?
Yeah. So think about aviation, the atomic bomb, rocket science, right? Very specialized. Things that go boom, you want really specialized people to know what they're doing when they're handling those things. So it's probably a good idea to send them to a specialized school. And what's more specialized than the university? Well, then you have your hard sciences on one side, and then you have your alleged humanities on the other side. That's when the communists decide, wait, if we take over those things, we'll at least have a half of it, and then give it another 20, 30 years, and we can have the other side. And so that's what we're seeing these days. But that shift over into specialization, but then also that facts value distinction should be that twofold that's being talked about here. Well, religious and ethical claims were soon understood to be merely private feelings and personal opinions. Religion and values could not provide knowledge. In fact, they were neither true nor false. Again, a culture downstream from politics probably plays a part here. You think post World War II, you have the nature of impending doom of the Cold War. You have the hippie movement, free love, drug use coming into play, and that's kind of taking hold in the university as well. And what's there to contend to it? Well, you have the sciences, which doesn't talk anything about that. It can make the better drugs, right? But it can't provide you the claims. And so what's there to answer it? And if Christianity kind of gives over and says, well, that's the secular era, we need to have our own part, what will we expect if it doesn't come up against something to try and stop it?
Yeah.
That's where we find. Well, natural and revealed theology became a matter of faith. Those are for the churches, not for the universities, and it's definitely not for the politics now, and it's not for the real world, and it's not for when you go to the convenience store, and it's not for what to do in the courtroom, or how to make the best business deals, the most moral business deals. All that is just a matter of faith, and there's no reason for one to touch on the other, right? Nothing bad could possibly happen. Said famous last words.
That's right.
Knowledge of God and related matters were tolerated as long as their supporters did not claim to actually have knowledge. You can have those beliefs, but to say that that they're the case, or that hearken, other people are wrong for not having those beliefs, well, then you're outside the proper view of society at this time. Scientism won the day as the fact-value distinction prevailed. We have the hard sciences. We can titrate this. We can provide peer-reviewed views. They can do the same experiments, produce the same results we can show you, and that's what gets you truth and nothing but the truth. So help you, nobody. So
Science, right. He says that there was a shift then from a unified curriculum grounded in God to a fragmented curriculum based only on the empirical sciences, right? So we left the notion of university, and we kind of fragmented the curriculum and chopped it up. Also from a cognitive view where theological and ethical claims could be judged true or false, to a non-cognitivist or positivist view where such claims were neither true nor false, but simply either meaningless or perhaps mere expressions of feeling.
Yeah.
So we had this shift here, right? Away from curriculum grounded in God to science, and also away from a cognitivist view of theology and ethical claims, that is, that they were either true or false, right? To a non-cognitivist view that ethical and religious claims were neither true nor false, but were either meaningless or perhaps just expressions of our feelings, right?
Right.
And so, as I mentioned earlier, the logical positivists kind of bought into this thing in the early 1900s, right? Where now ethical and moral claims were just expressions of our feelings, right? The notion of emotivism in ethics is
Yeah.
what we're talking about here. It's just an expression of your emotions.
Right. Well, let's remember where the original purposes of college education were. The first purpose was to acquire knowledge and to acquire the skills to obtain knowledge. Again, more specific types of knowledge there. In a modified form, this purpose was retained. The new goal, though not aimed at discovering truth, was to facilitate useful research within a framework of changing truth. This is where you became even more the poor college student who was going to graduate school, and you were tasked as close to slave wages as you could possibly get, and in the hopes that your name could be addendumed to the research that breaks the new grounds of the new discovery. And then from there you get your doctorate, and then you can also have the slave wages underneath you as a university professor. No offense to any university professors out there. Well,
right.
maybe
or
some.
the slave laborers, the researchers.
Right. The second purpose was to develop the spiritually, morally, and politically virtuous graduates who could serve God, the state, and the church well. Again, those are all the Padilla, the culture, the citizen, the responsibilities, the ethical virtues that you need to not just be the individual, but the individual who is part of the collective that serves others. Those could not be modified, but had to be done away with entirely. Why? Because we're talking about spirituality, morality, the politically virtuous. Good political? No, it just has to be, everything is political, and it's just your own personal version of that. But politically virtuous graduates that are being produced. Those are things, those three areas we have to wipe out, because again, we can't scratch test it. We can't break it down to its basic parts and build it back up again, see what makes it tick. If we can't do that, then no knowledge claim is able to be done there, because science doesn't deal with those types of knowledge claims. They'd even say, Scientism would say they don't even exist.
Right.
And so they have to be done away with, because, well, that's just wasting our time. We're here to get man on the moon. And to shoot a man, 90 million miles away in 3 days on a thing that you light and hope it doesn't blow up. Well, to talk about, the humanities, well, no, we're trying to get a human to the moon, and we do that through physics and chemistry and mathematics. Even math is maybe a little bit too much into the hoity-toity, our numbers real category, but they're useful. So, and we can keep doing 2 + 2 = 4 until the cows come home, and we'll still get that. So those are the areas we need to concentrate on. Once we won the space race, well, then maybe we'll talk about it. And We've never talked about it since then.